celebrity guests, community activists, lifestyle tips, real-world stories, health advice. Presenting Wellness 360 with Melissa Billie Clark.
Hello and welcome to Wellness 360. I'm Melissa Billie Clark. We are thrilled to share this journey with you where we will bring in medical experts, people who have experienced medical diagnoses and want to share their story with you. We will discuss everything from how to care for animals to taking care of yourself so you can live a better quality of life. Some of our topics include mental health, good hygiene, the latest health news, and important interviews with high-profile and everyday people. Our goal is to give back and let you know that you are not alone in any circumstance you may be dealing with. I've been a journalist and published writer with 6 years experience, and I knew after a while in my industry that I wanted to utilize my skills for the greater good and help my community. Once I noticed that I was able to give a voice to those who make a difference, my life improved significantly and my work became purposeful. I want to thank the folks here at LFN for believing in my work and giving me this opportunity. We hope this show helps you, for this show was made with you in mind. Today we speak with Dara Mormealy, who lost her father Joseph from esophageal cancer in 2010. Since her father's passing, it has been Dara's passion and goal to bring as much awareness to this disease as possible and let others know that they are not alone. Gastroenterologist Dr. Anam Khan from MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston will join us via Zoom to educate us on esophageal cancer and prevention. We will speak to my pal, Mr. Bill Tush, who had a show on CNN, The Bill Tush Show. He gave me some advice and we'll chat about this, about his work. But first, we have a segment that we call Link to Wellness, where we provide up-to-date medical information. We will take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
You have to know the past to understand the present. Discover stories that helped shape humanity. 7 incredible stories told in one great production. You don't want to miss this opportunity. Stay connected on May 15th and watch the premiere of Genesis. Only on LFN.
Welcome back. We are ready for your Link to Wellness. Americans are investing more time and more money into self-care, and millennials are the majority of them. According to explodingtopics.com, millennials are spending twice as more as baby boomers. In the last 5 years, Google's research for self-care has increased by 142%. Meditation apps such as most popular Calm were valued at $2 billion. Skincare sales have risen since 2014 at 5% per year, and tea, such as fasting tea, has grown by 204% in the last 10 years. Unfortunately, with the good comes the bad, and since the pandemic, 29% of Americans are struggling with anxiety and depression, with the states being Arkansas, Kentucky, and Louisiana at the highest. But have no fear, workplaces have been making mental health a priority since 2020. I guess we can thank the millennials for circulating the green around the United States. How many of you love blueberries? My dogs and I eat them on the daily. Well, in a new study reported by Medical News Today, consuming a handful of blueberries every day can strengthen not only cognitive but cardiovascular health. Researchers say the benefits come from anthocyanins, which is the blue pigment in blueberries that can affect your health in a positive way. Over 12 weeks, around 30 healthy male and female adults between the ages of 65 and 80 drank 26 grams of freeze-dried wild berry powder. This is equivalent to about 75 to 80 blueberries, while the other drank vitamin C, fiber, and macronutrient-matched placebo. The researchers found no difference in arterial stiffness or blood lipid levels between the blueberry consuming group and the placebo group, despite finding evidence that blueberries increase cerebral and vascular blood flow. You're watching Wellness 360. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Okay. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Welcome back to Wellness 360. We are here with Bill Tush. Mr. Bill had a long-time talk show on CNN called The Bill Tush Show, but you had another show before that, sir. Hi, how are you, my friend?
Fine, Melissa. I had about 15 shows before that.
Tell us how, Mr. Bill, you look so amazing. We have a photo up of you. Tell us how
must be an old one.
No, you look gorgeous. Tell us how your career became.
Well, I started out, a lot of people don't realize that long before TBS became what it is today, back in those days, it was a local Atlanta television station, and I was the announcer. And that entailed doing the voiceover stuff, and then I ended up doing the newscast, which was in the middle of the night, and it was just me on camera, just reading news copy, and it became a comedy show. And Ted Turner, who owned the station, thought it was funny, and we just kept going with it.
Yeah, and you've interviewed the likes of Muhammad Ali, Tom Cruise, my favorite, and Betty Davis. What makes a great interview with an A-list actor or celebrity?
Well, you know, the thing like Tom Cruise, when he was on the show, it was his first movie, and it wasn't even, and I'm trying to think of what the movie is that he's known for. Right Moves was his first big movie. He did a movie that I think the original title was Tequila Sunrise, where he was part of a ensemble cast. And he wasn't even known when I did the interview with him. And then, of course, he went on to become a superstar. But then you go to the other end of it, you've got Betty Davis, who, my God, you know, that's like sitting next to, I don't know, a god of show business. To kind of sound silly. But I mean, Betty Davis. I wasn't really nervous talking to her. It was like, what do you ask this person? And I'll tell you this. There are so many interviews and people I've met over the years. I'll see them in an old movie or whatever, and I'll go, God, I wish I had a chance to do that over again.
Yeah.
You sit down with somebody. I mean, Betty Davis. What do you talk to Betty Davis about when you have 6 minutes?
Her eyes.
How do you go over an entire career?
Yeah.
Her eyes. It's funny you mentioned that because when I interviewed her, that song was popular. Betty Davis' Eyes.
That's right.
And I asked her, and I swear I asked her what she thought of that song. And I don't remember the answer. I think she said something funny. But yeah, that's what I asked her.
That's so cool. I love that so much, Mr. Bill. Did you ever have a challenging interview?
Oh my God! I mean, I was going to tell you if you want tips on doing these interviews. What I've learned over the years is don't ever think you can walk in and just sit down and wing it.
Right.
You got to be prepared, and I was guilty of not being prepared in a million different interviews. But I remember one time they put a guy on our show by the name of Buckminster Fuller. Mm-hmm. Now, Buckminster Fuller was a scientist who invented a thing called a geodesic dome. Okay? I had no idea what he was talking about.
And what advice do you give to a new talk show host?
Just, as I said, be prepared. Trust your producers. Do your research.
Yes.
And never mumble.
What advice do you give me, Mr. Bill?
I just gave it to you.
Oh, come on. I thought you were going to give me a little something because we're pals.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. When I first met you, you could have been doing an interview. You were so much fun to talk to.
You're the best of the best, Mr. Bill. I'm so proud to know you. You can find, you're the best. You can find Bill Tush on Instagram @Bill Tush. Bill, thank you so much.
All right, Melissa, great to talk to you. Great success to you, okay?
Thank you, sir, so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. You're watching Wellness 360. We'll be right back.
If you love them enough to drive an hour to cheer them on as they get beat 11-0 in the rain, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Throw that ball, Diane. Woo! You got this.
Have you ever wished you could actually follow in the footsteps of Jesus? Well, now it's much easier to do. Stay tuned weekdays at 8 a.m. Eastern and watch the story of the life of Jesus unfold.
Welcome back to Wellness 360. With us is Dara Mormealy. Dara is an advocate for esophageal cancer, early screenings, and a research supporter. Dara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your father, Joseph.
My father was a drinker early on in his life. So when he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in 2008, we knew that something wasn't right. He had chronic acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion for several years. And the thing that topped it off was one 4th of July. 4th of July is our holiday. That's our spiritual holiday. We spend the whole day together. He actually got food lodged in his esophagus. So it was alarming to us, especially in light of the fact that he had had chronic acid reflux and heartburn for so many years, and nothing wasn't diagnosed, it wasn't treated. So it took that. It took his food being stuck in his esophagus to actually get an endoscopy. And that's when he was diagnosed with the cancer. They found a tumor in his esophagus. And by that time, it was too late to really treat. He had aggressive chemo, radiation, and it was a nightmare until October 2010. That was when he finally passed away. And one of the emotional parts of it was that he said to me, what should I do? Should I have the surgery? Should I keep doing chemo? And unfortunately, you know, it's not just a cancer that he was able to spearhead by himself, because we didn't even know esophageal cancer was a cancer. Sure. You hear a throat cancer, you hear a stomach cancer. We didn't know that you can get cancer in the tract itself. So we weren't able to really make the best decisions because you weren't educated at the time. In 2008 and 9 and 10, I wasn't on social media. I wasn't connected to any support groups. So, you know, unfortunately, he passed. And, you know, it took a while for me to establish a connection to the outside world to find a cause to fight for him.
Sure. I know, like with my mom and my father, we always think we can do something more.
Right.
And that's what kills me now, but I still learn to live that I did do the best I can.
Absolutely.
And then we leave it up in God's hands. So your dad must have been very sick a lot.
He was sick, you know, well, especially when he was having treatment.
Right.
It was very hard for him to deal with, and this is a cancer where there's so many options. There's surgery, there is the chemo, there are pills, and if you don't educate yourself, which we didn't have that advantage, and that's why I'm an advocate right now, to let people know to look for the early warning symptoms and advocate for yourself and your family. Look things up, go to doctors, find the information, do your homework, because if I had known to do that, I probably, you know, I would have given my father a little bit more guidance, but as an advocate, it's important to give other families the resources that I didn't have, and to help people who come to the event that I hold in collaboration with the Salgi Foundation, just reach 1 or 2 people out there who is like, that's me, I have this, maybe I should get a scope, maybe I should go to my doctor. And prevention is the best, I guess, tool and the best weapon we have. So that's my long-term goal of holding my events, and my father would have wanted that.
Absolutely.
Because he would have said, if I had the tools, if I would have known, you know, tell people that. So he would be telling me, tell people to get a scope, to go to their doctor, and I try to carry that work on in his legacy.
Yeah, he's very proud of you.
Thank you.
How did you help him mentally when he was going through his trials and tribulations?
I always told him that whatever his decision was, I supported him, which is the hardest thing, because when we were at the end of his battle, he asked me, he says, what do you think I should do? And I says, I know I'm your daughter, but I cannot make that decision for you. And he decided to go peacefully in hospice. And whatever your parent wants, you know, if they're on their deathbed, spend every moment that you can with them. And he taught me that even if you're complaining, even if they're in pain, be by their bedside, talk to them, comfort them, because you don't know how much longer you have. So that's what he taught me in his last moments, emotionally and spiritually.
That's right.
So it's wonderful.
Tell us about your races. Thank you for sharing your father with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Well, I guess in short, I became a runner in 2015. My first race was actually for ovarian cancer. My second race, I think, was for prostate cancer. And then I raced for pancreatic cancer. And I was like, why isn't there anything locally in my neighborhood for esophageal cancer, something that affected my whole family? So I had a New Year's resolution in 2019 to do something for my dad. And I'm like, this is never going to happen. But I reached out to a race organization that I had actually ran a race with, and I collaborated with them. I researched some esophageal cancer foundations, and Salgi stood out because they had a great mission. They put the money towards research and tools that can detect the cancer early on. So I collaborated. I said, let's have a race. I started a registration page. We started doing marketing. Our first event in 2019 got 150 people, and those people brought people in for the following year, which we had some virtual for during the pandemic. Last year I had over 250 people registered for the event, which was amazing. People from Texas, Florida.
You're like a mentor to these people.
I was, and I love that we all come together.
Yes.
And we connect, and they make friends, and they support each other. And support is the biggest part of this, because not everybody knows what to do.
Absolutely.
So if you have, unresolved feelings, a lot of them people feel guilty of the journey that they've taken with this cancer. So connections during this event help people really feel closure.
Tell us really quick what they ask you, because these people do come to you because of everything that you went through.
They do, and they basically ask me, what's the emotion? What do I do? How do I feel? How do I get out of this guilty feeling? How do I stop feeling this guilt? And it's not, it's an impossible feeling to avoid with this cancer, because it's too late. It's too late. The feeling is that it's too late. Right. But also, they want to know how they can contribute, how they can help. And I said the best way you can help is to come to the event physically and put a picture up of your loved ones, walk for them, tell your story. I mean, the most important thing they could do is to tell their story, because that story educates 10 people, 20 people, and maybe those 10 people will get endoscopies. Maybe those 20 people will go to the doctor.
Yes.
So it's important for me not just to donate and not just for the research purposes, but also to come to the event and educate and raise the advocacy.
Thank you so much, Dara.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Wellness 360.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
We are back with Wellness 360. We are here with Dara Mormili, an advocate for esophageal cancer research. Joining us is Dr. Anam Khan, a gastroenterologist. She is an assistant professor of gastroenterology, hepatology, and nutrition at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. Dr. Khan, please pronounce your first name. It's so beautiful.
It's Anam.
Anam. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan, for being with us today and shedding light on esophageal cancer and everything esophagus. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Now, please tell us, what does the esophagus do in our body?
Absolutely. So the esophagus is a hollow muscular tube that sits between the mouth and the stomach, and its main function is a transit function. When we eat a bolus of food, it takes about 6 seconds for that food bolus to reach the stomach through the esophagus.
Wow, and how does esophageal cancer occur?
Absolutely. So there are two subtypes of esophageal cancer. The first kind is esophageal squamous cell cancer, and the second is esophageal adenocarcinoma. Both of these subtypes of cancers arise in different cells. The first one, esophageal adenocarcinoma, happens in the bottom third of the esophagus, and it's a result of chronic acid exposure of the lower esophageal cells, which then undergo a series of changes as a result of this chronic acid exposure and begin to resemble cells that are more of the gastric, meaning stomach, or intestinal kind. And the other type of cancer, which is esophageal squamous cell cancer, happens when there is a proliferation of esophageal squamous cells, mostly in the upper or middle esophagus.
And what are the symptoms of esophageal cancer?
That's a great question. Sometimes there can be no symptoms in the early stages of disease, but when symptoms do occur, the first symptom is trouble swallowing or painful swallowing, which we call dysphagia. The esophagus is usually 2 to 3 centimeters in diameter, and when that diameter starts decreasing to about 15 millimeters, that's when patients describe a feeling of food and sometimes even liquid getting hung up in their esophagus. So that's one symptom. The other ones are unintentional weight loss, heartburn, a feeling of discomfort in the sternum, a cough, hoarseness, or vomiting of blood, blood in the stools, vomiting, or lab work that shows anemia.
And what causes esophageal cancer?
So that's a great question. Esophageal cancer has modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. So non-modifiable risk factors are things that we can't really do anything about, and there are 3. The first one is age. This is a disease that happens in individuals who are 55 or older. So only 15% of cases have been described in individuals less than 55 because it is a condition that happens in older individuals. The second risk is being a male. So men have 3 times greater risk of developing esophageal cancer compared to their female counterparts. And the final risk is ethnicity. So in those 2 subtypes which I described, esophageal adenocarcinoma, which is the more common type of esophageal cancer here in the United States at about 70%, that happens more commonly in Caucasian populations. The other type of esophageal cancer, which is squamous, happens more often in African American populations. So these are the non-modifiable risk factors which we can't really do anything about. Moving on to modifiable risk factors, the most important one is smoking, which has been implicated in both subtypes of esophageal cancer. And in smoking, the risk is present with cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, as well as vaping, which is becoming more and more common, especially in younger individuals. Now, smoking is, it's bad, and the risk keeps increasing with the length of smoking history, as well as the amount of cigarettes that are being consumed. So if you have a patient who has more than a pack year smoking history for many years, they are about at 2 times an increased risk of developing esophageal adenocarcinoma compared to their non-smoking counterparts. And this risk continues to be present even after smoking cessation. This causality is even stronger for esophageal squamous cell cancer with smoking, but the risk does seem to go down when stopping smoking. The second risk factor, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for that information. I just wanted to ask you as well, and I apologize for interrupting you, alcohol, and what about spicy foods?
Well, so spicy food often leads to the symptom of heartburn, and chronic heartburn, which has been present for many years, over 5 years, with frequent episodes of heartburn, where heartburn is happening weekly or more often than that, what that can do is it can lead to development of a precancerous condition called Barrett's esophagus. And Barrett's esophagus has the ability to progress to esophageal adenocarcinoma. Now, bear in mind that not all patients with heartburn will go on to develop Barrett's esophagus or even esophageal adenocarcinoma, but long-standing uncontrolled heartburn increases the risk of acid exposure in the lower esophagus. So that's another modifiable risk factor. You spoke about alcohol, so heavy alcohol use has been associated with both esophageal adenocarcinoma and squamous. And what is heavy alcohol use? In a male, it is more than 4 drinks per day or more than 14 drinks per week. And in a female, it's more than 3 drinks per day or more than 7 drinks per week. Another modifiable risk factor that's very important is obesity. So obesity has been linked to the development of esophageal adenocarcinoma, and not all obesity is the same. It's central obesity that we worry about, which is a condition where the majority of the weight is carried in the waist. And so the recommendation is to maintain a waist to hip ratio of less than 0.9 because a greater ratio is a risk factor for esophageal cancer. Other risk factors or healthy patterns to adopt are exercising regularly, staying away from processed meat, red meat, having a diet which is mostly plant-based, so high in fruits and vegetables. These are, the main modifiable risk factors, and there are a few others which, I can discuss if time permits.
Yes, please go right ahead, Dr. Khan. This is amazing information. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, in Barrett's esophagus, there have been studies that show that the use of aspirin or NSAIDs can decrease progression to esophageal adenocarcinoma, but we do not recommend that patients take this solely for the purpose of chemoprevention. Another risk factor is, we hear about accidental lye ingestion, which is present in cleaning products. So if there is such a history, that may be something to be mindful about and screen such patients who had that kind of exposure. There are some medical conditions such as tylosis, Plummer-Vinson syndrome, where patients are at an increased risk of developing esophageal cancer. So it's important to make sure that, we have a good primary care provider who's up to date with our history. I also worked at a cancer center, and what's been seen here is that patients who have squamous cell cancer of other organs, like the head and neck or the lung, they are at an increased risk of developing squamous cell cancer of the esophagus as well, probably due to the shared risk factor of smoking.
Wow. Are there any treatments for this?
Absolutely. So before we jump to treatment, screening. So screening is a practice where we take patients who have no symptoms and we try to detect the cancer early. There is no screening that is recommended for asymptomatic patients in the general population for esophageal cancer. And that's quite unlike colon cancer, where everybody at a certain age is recommended to start screening. And this is because it has been shown that screening will not lead to any mortality benefit in esophageal cancer. However, if there are patients who have any of the risk factors that I mentioned, so especially if we see male patients who are over age 50 and they have symptoms of chronic heartburn, a prior smoking history, a family history of Barrett's esophagus or esophageal adenocarcinoma. Those are patients who would benefit from undergoing an upper endoscopy to actively look for esophageal cancer. And if there is a finding of Barrett's esophagus that's made, which is the precancerous condition that I described, then these individuals benefit from frequent endoscopic surveillance. So this is screening. Then we talked about the symptoms of esophageal cancer. So if any patient is having any of the symptoms that I described, then they should reach out to a gastroenterologist so that they can undergo a high quality upper endoscopy to detect this, to see if there is this condition, to obtain biopsies. Now, once a diagnosis, so moving on to treatment, if a diagnosis of esophageal cancer is made, the treatment depends on the stage of disease. And if, it's early onset disease, so if it's disease that's only involving the innermost lining of the esophagus, or even before that, if it's Barrett's esophagus, which is more advanced on biopsies with a condition called dysplasia, then those individuals benefit from endoscopic therapy. For Barrett's esophagus with dysplasia, we use an energy in the esophagus called radiofrequency ablation to take care of that lesion then and there. For early stage esophageal cancer that's only involving the mucosa of the esophagus, there are endoscopic therapies that can take care of this condition in centers that specialize in such procedures. Now, if the disease spreads beyond, that first layer into deeper layers of either the esophagus or surrounding organs, then treatment is different, and it involves chemotherapy plus minus radiation therapy, followed by surgery depending on stage of disease.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Khan, so much for that. Dara.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Khan?
Yes, I'm actually an advocate for esophageal cancer research, and I think our biggest question is because it's not like getting a colonoscopy or breast cancer. Once you're 40, you have to there's so many mandated, and also insurance covers these testing routines. Is there any chance that, like as you said, it's not detected early on, but if somebody is having, let's say they're 45 or they're younger and they're having chronic heartburn for 2 or 3 years, do you think that in the future there will be some maybe non-invasive screening that can detect the cancer cells early on, maybe even stages 1 and 2, because I understand that usually the cancer is not caught until it's in stage 3 or 4, which gives the patient a very short amount of time to fight it. It's like you're on the front line and you didn't even get a chance to get your battle armor together. So how can doctors, and I think we go into like the politics of the scope, getting an endoscopy, and gastro doctors and primary doctors, how can patients self-advocate for themselves if they're below that age and they want to get a scope because they've had chronic acid reflux and heartburn for 2 years, and the doctor's like, oh, just take Nexium, just take Prilosec, it'll go away. Do you think that there's a chance in the future that we can have a little bit more screening for earlier detection? Is there a possibility for that?
Those are all great questions, and you've asked me many questions together, so I'll try to answer.
Great.
Answer that in little bits and pieces. So the first thing that you asked is that if it's a symptomatic patient who's been having reflux for many years and is advocating for an upper endoscopy, I think that's a very straightforward answer, that they need an endoscopy, because at that point, if they're continuing to have heartburn despite being on a good acid reflux regimen, which is usually a high dose proton pump inhibitor twice a day, and after 8 weeks, if they continue to have reflux, then that's what we call refractory reflux, in which case we proceed with an upper endoscopic evaluation.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so it's important to pay attention to symptoms and how those symptoms are responding. There are also red flag symptoms where if there is heartburn and the heartburn is associated with vomiting or unintentional weight loss or anemia on labs, those two are reasons to proceed with an upper endoscopy from the outset. And that should be approved by insurance because they're presenting with symptoms that need to be investigated with a high quality upper endoscopy. To answer your question about screening, what's been found is that esophageal cancer is still a fairly uncommon disease entity in the United States. It accounts for only 1% of all cancers. And so to carry out a population-based screening, meaning all comers, in the population, to subject all of them to an endoscopy, for example, it would not be cost effective and it would not lead to improving cancer-related outcomes. But what's been seen is that in patients who have the right risk factors, screening is recommended. So for example, Barrett's esophagus, which I mentioned, if I see a patient in clinic who's had heartburn for a long time and they are obese, for example, or they're white, or they have a smoking history, that would be a reason for me to go ahead and do a screening upper endoscopy. So in the absence of any screening recommendations in the average risk individuals, it's important to know your body and watch for any new symptoms and present to a doctor in a timely fashion. Your question about non-invasive ways of detecting early stage cancer. So there are investigational diagnostic modalities that are being tested. One of them is the sponge, which is passed into the esophagus. It collects cells from the superficial lining of the esophagus, and then those are studied for abnormal DNA and in an attempt to try to catch these conditions early. In places like in certain Asian countries, there are population-based screenings that are being conducted. So for example, in countries like Iran, China, India, the prevalence of squamous cell esophageal cancer is quite high. And in those populations, taking an asymptomatic patient and having them go through an upper endoscopy, the likelihood of finding something in a population cohort is high enough to justify that practice. That same practice would not be justified based on the current numbers in the United States.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Do you have any other questions?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Dara had told me that she had a hard time getting a gastro person to speak with her, a doctor, so that's why she had so many questions for you. I wanted her to have the opportunity.
I did. That was my main question, and some doctors feel intimidated because they feel like it's their fault. Like I'm asking, well, why isn't this done? We have so much technology.
Yeah.
We have so many preventative screenings for other cancers. Why is this cancer sort of on the back line? And I think one of the strangest, most unique things about this is that we all get heartburn.
Yeah.
We all get acid reflux, and it can mean nothing for a month or a week. And when this happens, you know, a year and 2 years, my father had acid reflux and heartburn for over 7 or 8 years minimum, and he was never given an endoscopy until he couldn't swallow. So it took that, and I said, well, why are you just taking antacids? Why are you just going to the doctor? And when he couldn't swallow and the food that literally got stuck, as you had mentioned, there was swelling, why did it have to reach that point to have the endoscopy? And he only survived 2 years after that. So it didn't give him a fair amount of time to stop having spicy foods, to stop doing the lifestyles, to stop practicing those lifestyles, to even repair his body. And I guess that's another question. If somebody has that wearing away, the Barrett's esophagus and the narrowing of the esophagus, is it, I want to say reversible, but is it repairable to the point where it won't turn into cancer cells?
So first of all, thank you for sharing your father's story, and he must be so proud of you for championing this cause and doing a tremendous effort with advocacy. It's unfortunate that, you know, we need advocacy to sometimes convince the community that this is an important issue.
Yeah.
But thank you, and I don't know what patients would do without individuals such as yourself.
Thank you.
Barrett's esophagus, your question was that can it be prevented from progressing to esophageal cancer? And the answer is yes. So when we make the diagnosis of Barrett's esophagus, which is a precancerous condition, much like a mole on the skin, where a dermatologist would be observing that closely to make sure it doesn't turn into anything serious. So Barrett's esophagus is a precancerous condition. When we find it, we look at it very carefully under the microscope to make sure it doesn't have something called dysplasia, which is, in simple terms, a condition where the cells are in a state of disarray, and it's one step closer to esophageal cancer. So we look for those changes on the microscope, but at the same time, what we're doing is we are very aggressively telling our patients, counseling them on risk factor modification. So from all those modifiable risk factors, be it obesity, be it smoking, we try to make sure that they are as optimized as possible. We then start them on a proton pump inhibitor, which has been shown in very nice studies to actually shorten the length of a segment of Barrett's esophagus and sometimes even cause entire regression of Barrett's esophagus. So PPI, and these are the family medicines that end in prozol, so omeprazole and pantoprazole, or more commonly known as Nexium and Prilosec. So these are actually like chemotherapy because they prevent progression of this precancerous condition, Barrett's esophagus, to those higher stages of dysplasia, all the way up to esophageal adenocarcinoma. And so we never let our patients miss these doses, even if their symptoms of reflux improve. And then we plug our patients into very well-defined surveillance programs. So anybody with Barrett's esophagus comes back at 3 to 5 year intervals with a repeat upper endoscopy so that we can keep an eye on their Barrett's esophagus and look for those dysplastic changes. if we find dysplastic changes, we can actually treat them with radiofrequency ablation. So overall, it's important to note that only 0.5% of Barrett's actually converts into esophageal adenocarcinoma. So it gives us a tremendous opportunity to break that progression, intercept by changing these risk factors and preventing patients from developing esophageal adenocarcinoma. And the good statistic is that overall, the trends of esophageal adenocarcinoma, which were increasing since the 1990s, are now stabilizing. Although with obesity and the obesity pandemic, this trend may change.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. You're amazing. That's amazing information.
That was great information. That was perfect. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of insight. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Khan's going to be back on our show to talk about colon cancer, and I'm looking forward to hearing your insight about that. Dr. Khan, thank you so much for helping us regarding this and helping Dara with her questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was lovely.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon, okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Of course.
You're watching Wellness 360. We'll be right back.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you!
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Yo, camping buddy. Okay, you guys ready?
Dude, I thought you were driving.
I thought you were driving.
Oh, I never said I was driving.
I definitely can't drive.
If you're high, just don't drive. It's illegal everywhere. If you feel different, you drive different.
We are back with Dara Mormili. Dara, let's talk about life after Dad.
Sure. So after my father passed away, a lot of great things happened to me just in general. I became editor at the newspaper shortly after, and there was just a lot of, I guess, ways that he was still with me. And I think the race is one of the things that spiritually he gave me the strength to do. Yeah. And I guess more specifically, he just, well, it's also because I wasn't taking care of him after. I was able to focus on my career, focus on relationships, focus on my friendships, just focus on other parts of my life. So that was a blessing.
And you met a man.
And I did. I met Joseph.
And his name is Joseph.
My partner's name, my life partner's name is Joseph as well.
You don't think that's a sign from heaven?
It might be a little bit of a coincidence. It could be a coincidence. It's a great coincidence.
Yeah.
But I've been with Joseph for almost 7 years now, and it's been amazing. And I feel like my father is always like shedding the light on me because he wants someone to be part of my life. And Joseph, my partner, has been an amazing part of my journey. Like, he's supported me in everything that I do. Yeah. When I wanted to put my event together, he's like, you could do it. He's like, you're gonna do it.
Good support system.
He was a great support system. Some people are like, how are you gonna put this together? Oh, that's nice. He'd be like, oh, that's nice. And he's like, you're gonna do this? You're gonna put an event together? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And he's still so supportive. He helped me put everything together. He had actually printed out the picture of my father that I use every year at the event. And it's important to have that. Now that I don't have my father anymore, physically, my father's always with me spiritually and mentally, but he still comes through for me. So it's great to have that, up there. I still see him up there. And to also have a partner who's very supportive.
Well, he sent Joseph over to you,
He did.
I love it so much. And
That's
you guys
possible.
run together, so you're a runner?
Yes, I'm a runner.
And what does that do for you spiritually?
There's a lot it does for me spiritually. To be honest, if you ask any runner, it does relieve a lot of the anxiety. And as I was running, I came up with a lot of ideas for my race. Like, what do people want at a race? And that kind of helped me put things together, because as I had mentioned, I'd partaken in so many races in the past. But spiritually, it kind of puts you in touch with yourself, because it's not a team sport. Running is something you do on your own, no matter how slow you are, no matter how fast you are. It's a sport that you do on your own. And if you're doing it outside, you're with nature, and it's kind of like you're alone in your own space. So you're forced to pretty much look at your life, assess your life, think about things, and it gives you confidence. It really gives you confidence, because if you can run 1 mile straight, you can run 2 miles straight, you can run 3 miles straight. And in turn, when I was putting the event together, I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get all these people together? How am I going to, how am I going to market this thing? What am I going to, and every run got me closer, because I was by myself.
Yeah.
And you just zone out. And I do think that a lot of runners have that spiritual moment.
I love it.
Where they just stop and they're like, wow, I could do anything.
It's beautiful.
It's the I can do anything moment.
I love it so much.
Yeah,
Tell us
great.
what's happening in September.
So September, I think it's September 16th, we're going to be in Marine Park. It's our 5th annual EC awareness event. I wasn't sure if I was going to hold it, because we moved this year, so I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to hold it. But the Salgi Research Foundation is gonna help us make it happen. So you can go to my Facebook. My Facebook, I have the public feed for everything. My father's campaign, if you want to donate some money, or you can register for the event. One of the things that I would love to have is a survivor to come to Brooklyn this year and to speak to families, to say it is possible to survive, it is possible to fight the winning battle.
Mm-hmm. How do they reach you at Salgi?
We could reach me directly at my email, darrenmoremillie@hotmail.com. You could even follow me on my Instagram. You could share it also. It's Brooklyn_runs this, _. So you can follow my social media. It's been a wild journey, and I hope to have at least 300 people at the event. It's gotten bigger and bigger every year.
Yeah.
And I want more people to come up to the microphone. Tell your father, your mother, your uncle, tell their story, because if you let it go down, people aren't going to learn, So you can register for the event. You don't even have to run or walk it. You can show up, you can volunteer, you could root people on the path.
Yeah.
It's just a good feeling, because like I said, it gives people closure, and it's good energy at a sad time.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's
it's
the most important thing.
Bittersweet moment.
It is.
I want to thank you on behalf of all of cancer kids that lost their parents from cancer, for everything that you do.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
You make a big difference, and thank you so much, Dara, for being here with us.
Oh, you're very welcome anytime, and I hope to spread the word. I hope everybody reaches out to me. It's not overwhelming for me, because I wish I had that when I was going through it. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with Wellness 360.
Wait! Not in the toilet!
No, don't do that.
No. Don't hit your brother! Ooh!
Not again.
I tell you about playing in the mud.
Raffy, not so close to the pool. Wait!
Frankie, Tabby, what are you doing? We told you never to touch the gun!
I'm sorry, I didn't think it was that big of a
deal.
deal.
You could have hurt yourself!
Safely store your guns. Unload, lock, and away from ammo.
Welcome back. We are just about that time for our daily health hack. We want to touch upon good sleep hygiene. Sleep is the best time to recharge, relax, and get ready for a brand new day where we can grow and be better selves than we were yesterday. Things you want to keep in mind are having a consistent bedtime. You train your body when you go to bed. So for example, if you go to bed by 9 o'clock and wake up at 5 every day, you want to keep those times consistent even on the weekends. Good enough sleep at least 7 to 8 hours will help you feel rested. If you nap throughout the day, try to limit it to 30 minutes maximum. Do relaxing activities like reading a book, perhaps some yoga, or watch a relaxing movie before closing your eyes. Have a cup of tea or golden milk. I love to change my sheets, take a warm shower, and think about all the great things that happened to me that day. Gratitude is the best way to end the day. We hope you enjoyed watching Wellness 360. I'm Melissa Billie Clark, and we'll see you soon.